check it out.
I think we're at the end.
One of the things that has become increasingly important in the mining business, and is as important as starting the mine, is finishing up the mine. Some of our old-time operators ended up having to drag material back uphill because they had dump slopes at 1.5 to 1 right to the property limits, instead of stepping it back a quarter mile so they could have a push down instead of a haul back when they were doing their final reclamations. This next project is about that phase, that reclamation stage, the cleanup, which really should be an ongoing issue in this day and age. In many jurisdictions, that money has to be posted before you start. So reclamation is as much a part of mining as exploration, mining, and milling is the finished product at the end of the day. So keep that in mind when you're doing your mine planning, to make sure that you leave enough space wherever you are to be able to meet your final reclamation plan. And I'll give you Parks and Rec.
Thank you guys for sticking with us. I promise we're the last group. Just give us 10 more minutes. We'll let you go. We are Parks and Rec. I'm Ashley Cheeseman.
I'm Danielle Taryn.
I'm Tyler McKinney. So an overview of our project, we were working on a mine that's in Fairfield, Texas. It's Big Brown, it's a coal mine. And we were working on the end of a pit pond reclamation site. And today we're going to walk through how we determined the regulating agencies that overviewed the reclamation process. We're going to run through the design of our pond, and then we're going to go through our economic analysis.
So this was our schedule. You will see that we didn't end up doing a production schedule. We did add things to our project that aren't on here. It took a long time to get our data. It took almost an entire semester to get it in a usable format. So we added some extra projects, and that's why that box is not done.
So we run into some risks during every project, and like Ashley said, the major one we had was receiving incomplete and incompatible data. We designed the project using MineSight, but when we originally got the data, we had to convert it through AutoCAD first and then run it through MineSight. And there was a whole ordeal through that we ended up fixing and resolving, which was good. And then we had a hard time communicating with our sponsor because they're all the way in Texas, so we relied on phone calls and emails as opposed to like a couple-hour drive up north. We had a flight all the way to Texas, which was really tough to do. And Danielle actually went out to a site visit earlier in the semester. And then we had scope creep like everyone else, but we dealt with that by minimizing that.
So this is our cost curve. We started out really slow. It was difficult to get anything from them in the first semester. So we took on a couple projects from them that we could do without MineSight, without the topological data and all the information that went along with that. We looked at solar and removal of power lines and that sort of thing. And then once we got our data, we caught up and got everything finished, actually under budget, which is amazing. So Texas is unique. They don't only have the federal government regulating them, but the Railroad Commission of Texas regulates mine reclamation out there, which was brand new to us. So we had to do a fair amount of research into what they required, and came to find out that they're pretty similar to the federal regulations that we have. They do have more stringent standards, and part of that comes from the oil and gas industry that's out there and the concerns that come with that. But they do have dedicated sections to coal mining as well. The people out there are leery of mining. There is a lot of mining out there, but people remember how mining was done 30, 40 years ago, even when we had all of these Superfund sites. So the Railroad Commission of Texas regulates the reclamation a little more stringently than the federal regulations would.
Another department in Texas that we had to work with was the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And in addition to just looking over wildlife preserves and making sure that they're all run properly and that there's a balanced amount of fish in the ponds and everything, they're also going to help Lumenon during the reclamation process as well to make sure that it's done correctly. That's what they have done in the past for the reclamation processes that have already been at the Big Brown Mine, so they're going to do that as well. And then on a national scale, we worked with the Office of Surface Mining, not worked with, but looked up the regulations to make sure that our design complied with those regulations. And they just require that it states the minimal requirements for reclamation, and we follow those. Like I said, we're doing Reclamation Area C in the Big Brown Mine. This is a past reclamation area, Reclamation Site B, and ours is going to be very similar to theirs. There's going to be mostly fish and wildlife habitats and pasture lands for animals to graze on. And then this reclamation site earned the Railroad Commission of Texas Reclamation Award for 2014 for an outstanding reclamation site because it had a diversity of plant and multiple water sources. And so we're hoping that our reclamation design will get an award like this as well.
Alright, so we had a couple different things, like Ashley and Tyler talked about, that we had to follow. The biggest things that I want to point out are the pond parameters. So we couldn't overpass about 1,500 acre feet in our design, and we also had to keep in mind an end pool elevation that was about 248 feet. And then we also wanted to include the suitable material haulback, which is about 4 feet we included in our elevation as well. So this is the first design that Luminant originally had when creating the reclamation. As you can see, it's very pretty. It has 3 very nice looking ponds. However, this is not ideal just because you can kind of see it's overlaid on top of the current topography. So you can kind of see the brown underneath the blue where it's off-centered a little bit. So there's a lot of material that's underneath that. And so that would require a lot of movement. And so we didn't want to keep that there. And Luminant was looking for an alternative to moving that material. So that's where we came up with our second design. So option 2 takes into account the current topography a little bit more. It's a little bit more natural looking in the sense that it does follow the topography, that we wouldn't have to move it as much, and it still follows all the regulations, so within that 1,500 acre feet and still leading up to a 248 feet elevation.
It has a much more natural look as well. If you look at this between the last design that was 3 little blobby ovals in the middle of the topography. So solar panels were one of the things that we took on in the first semester while we were waiting on our data. We knew that the power lines had to come down. However, we still have to monitor this system once we get it put into place. You can't say, well, we put in a pond, we're done, let's go have lunch, see you later. We need monitoring systems to make sure that everything goes as planned. And part of that, when we take down the power lines, is how are we going to operate these monitoring systems? So solar power gives a little bit of a green initiative. It looks good for the community. They like to see that. And it also will help keep these systems up while giving it a more natural appearance. Nobody wants to see power lines going through the middle of a pond area. It just looks ridiculous. We did run into an issue while we were looking at it. You can't put them too close to the pond because the pond settles. They've blasted it and it's not fully settled yet. So these solar panels will have to go near the infrastructure. They will need to be on a concrete slab because anytime they settle more than about a ½ inch, they need to be recalibrated. Because these particular ones will track the sun, and they'll make sure that you get optimal power from it.
Okay, so this is our overall budget. We considered a lot of different things. We didn't want to miss anything when looking at the budget. So the first thing is the dozer and mobile yards. So we use dozers that were within anything within 5,000 feet that need to be moved, and mobile material, so things like scrapers that were anything over 5,000 feet. And the dozers cost about $1.72 per yard, and the mobile equipment was about $2 per yard. Vegetation costs included structure or implementation of permanent structure, temporary structures, and also we included a replanting evaluation as well. So that was about 20% of the total acreage, just because some things die and you have to replant them. We also included the LiDAR aerial topography, which was about $11,000. It's about $37,000 every 4 months. Pumping, we would contract out to Benchmark, and that would cost about $390,000, about $32,000 per month. Utility line removal is about $70,000. We're going to go through Northeast Texas, and we anticipate that being reduced about 20 to 50% just due to our relationship with them and the fact that they're salvaging that material. So with that, it'd be just under $14 million, and even with the solar panels, it still is around $14 million.
Conclusions, we needed to follow all of the guidelines. We obviously couldn't tell them to make a design that didn't abide by regulations. And then we looked at a couple other things, the budget and the solar panels, to
So-
make sure it was on par.
Our recommendations is that we use our design. It's more economically and environmentally friendly, and we also recommend using solar panels for monitoring.
Are you gonna line the ponds? Do they have to be lined?
So we're using the suitable material that they had left over, which is red dirt, and so that basically turns into a clay, a pond.
So you just pack it down then?
Yeah, it wasn't really in our scope, but we know from their past design that that's what they're planning on doing.
And is it groundwater, is the groundwater naturally gonna come up, or are you having to pump water from somewhere else?
I think it's natural.
So, did you have costs in there for seeding and vegetation? And,
Yes.
Is that in there? Okay.
Yeah, so
And then
we
also,
have-
what sort of land uses do you envision post-reclamation?
Pretty much what they're looking to do is make it a wildlife sanctuary. So all of the endangered species, all of that kind of thing, they're really looking to get those to be rebuilt. So it's an interesting idea for a mine, because at the beginning you deal with all of those endangered species and permits and all of that fun stuff, and they're coming back and saying, well, we might have displaced them for a little bit, but we want to bring them back and not just to where they were when we started, but we want to make it better. So they're working really closely with the Fish and Wildlife Department.
Are there endangered species?
Yeah, we have, when I was even working there, we had bald eagles on site, so we had to be pretty wary of their nests even, just because they would come there and nest, and we also had terns, and those are protected as well, so they like to settle on the beachy like sand, and so we have to be aware of those as well.
So, did you guys have to like relocate any animals or anything like that?
No,
We
it's
might have at the beginning,
during the mining
when they
process.
opened it, but that wasn't
Oh,
part of our scope.
Yeah, but if there are like bald eagles or terns or something like that, you actually have to enclose that space and you can't mine it out
oh, wow, so that's
during the
what
mining
we-
process. So because it's a reclamation, that stuff has already been taken care of, but for the mining, that's just a reference.
Is there any way to get that $13 million price tag down with mobile yards, maybe using scrapers or?
Yeah, we were anticipated using scrapers, and that was at like a $2. So our prices are really conservative, so depending on if we're able to save any more room, movement and things like that, that price could go down.
Thank you for your time. We have run over. My color commentary in between, probably. Not allowed for in the 8 presentations of 15 minutes or so. And we will do the grading and do the math and make sure that take all of your copies away and look at them. We'll evaluate them according to the metric that you were given, all right? And then we will post the grades and your final adjustment in D2L, okay? Yes, I'd like each of you to, each team to provide the jump drive. And I've got, here we go, 3, 4, 5. That means I'm short 3. Yes.
White U of A.
Which?
White U of A.
Oh, pardon me, yeah. 3, 4, 5, 6, missing 2. 7. And who am I missing? It's coming. That way you don't have to carry the book around. Huh? No, the report. Commissioner's report. Son, look on your. Okay, get it on.